So I had this guy I know from the gym that I've been like, just subtly telling him about Suncoast, and just like inviting him. He's pretty disenfranchised with Christianity, and he's got a brother-in-law who's super evangelical and just like has turned him off completely to religion in general. And I was just like subtly dropping hints like Suncoast is just a little different. I think you'll really enjoy it. And he came this weekend, and he comes out. He comes out. Here's this, he's just jacked Boston guy, just real hard nosed. It's like you just know, like this is not a guy that just easily cries, and he just walks out. He's just got big alligator tears in his eyes.
Yeah.
And you got to him. You got to him. And it was a really just like humbling moment, and he just absolutely loves Suncoast. And I know we've like shared some stories from this weekend, but did you have anything this weekend that you were just like, this was like a super emotional moment?
Yeah, it goes back to, I guess, the theme of the sermon, stuff I have to learn, like don't play fair, run up the score on loving people, run up the score on forgiving people. And I live that, man. I live that. When you go through a painful divorce, regardless of any situation that led to it, somebody has to break that cycle of tit for tat, eye for eye.
Yeah. And
for the sake of my children, I did that, and I did some things that a lot of people might think are unfair, depending on whose side you ask. But I think that was a moment for me of like clarity that brought the sermon to its head. Was people will look at you you'll be the bad guy in somebody's story. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And you don't have to return that misunderstanding with more misunderstanding. And for me, it was that moment to teach my kids a really important lesson, just about work and not giving up. And, when I put, that Uber driver app on, I said, you're coming to work with Daddy. And they're like, what? Because they had only known me as a professor. And
right.
I said, we're going to go deliver some food. And it was it's a hard story to tell, because I was deeply embarrassed, not only for me, but for my children, to not be able to pay for those groceries, but to know, hey, there's other means, and I'm going to show them that, something I said a long time ago is there's nothing beautiful in the world that doesn't have a little dirt on it. There's nothing we see that's made by God that doesn't have some sort of dirt. And you can either say, I'm buried here, and buried things don't come back. Or you could say, I'm planted, and I'm going to grow from this, and I'm going to show my children something. And that's what it was. It's like, in that moment, it didn't seem fair to me that I was working 8 jobs. And because of this holiday weekend, my check hadn't deposited. That's not my kids' fault. But I also showed them, you can either stay down, or we're going to. And they had a blast, like knocking on doors, delivering food. And that's an absolutely true story, man. And it's one that, in my mind, obviously years before ever coming to teach this sermon this weekend, that reminded me, life's not fair. It's not fair.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to sit and complain about it, at least verbally to my children, but I'm going to use it as a teaching moment that life's not fair, but there's always a way. There's always a way. You have to make a way.
Yeah.
And so for your buddy to hear that and to be moved by it, I hope it inspired him to see that, church is not always about condemnation and judgment and reminding you of how bad a person you are, but that the good in us rises above the worst of the rest of us. And that's how we stop this vicious cycle of what you do to me, I'm going to do to you. What you take from me, I'm going to take from you. Somebody has to break it, but it's not about having people walk all over you. It's about you, and that's what I think the brilliance of Jesus' teaching is. There's a subliminal message that says, when a guy forces you to go a mile, voluntarily go 2.
Mm-hmm.
And what does that say? Like, who's really in control? Like, it's a very subversive way to not play fair.
Well, we have a rule that I have with the girls that they are not allowed to utter the words, "That's not fair." And basically we use it as a teaching moment of, like, this is not, life isn't always going to be fair. If somebody gifts something to London and not to Leighton, that's okay. Mm-hmm. Sometimes London's going to get a little bit more than you do. Just because somebody, like, things happen. And it's so funny because it's so instinctual for us. Like even the fact that like if London hits Leighton's going to hit her back.
Yeah.
You know, it's such like nobody taught her that. Like that's just instinct. Like, oh, you hurt me, now I'm going to hurt you back, and I'm going to hurt you just a little bit more than you hurt me.
Yeah.
Hopefully. That's the goal.
Yeah.
So that like when you said that line, like it's hard to follow Jesus. Like this is one of those moments of like understanding. Like this is one of those really, really hard going against our instinct moments.
Yeah.
That truly does lead to a better life.
Yes.
But it goes against everything we know as humans. And the sermon reminded me of one of my first like major exposures to this idea of grace and unfairness and within Christianity. I grew up in this church. I literally was baptized there, like everything, like all the way up until I was about 19 years old. It's where I fell in love with Christ. It's where I fell in love with leading worship. I was super involved. You know, I did my internship there when I was in high school, and I eventually was hired on after I graduated to help with the music program, among other things too. So when I was about 18, I was working, and one of my duties, I was kind of like the underling, you know, the lowest on the totem pole kind of guy. So they had me do some things that were like, you got to take out the trash, you know, every Thursday before the office closes, stuff like that. And so there was a Thursday, or maybe a midweek, something like that. But anyway, so it was midweek, it was my day to take out the trash. And so I go and I look outside the office, and we had the dumpsters right there. And I noticed the dumpsters were super full. Like there would not be any trash. I couldn't get any more in there. So I was just like, I'll just do it tomorrow. I knew that the trash people were coming in the morning. Dumpsters would be empty. I'll just empty out the trash in the morning. So I get in the next day, and my office door was closed, which was a little abnormal. I don't normally lock my door or close it. And I open it, and the trash from all the office, from the food, from like food, kitchen, everything was all in my office, scattered amongst like my desk, my chair. I mean, they took like old food and put it in my chair, and I was pissed. And so like it was the pastors, you know, the teaching pastor, the lead pastor, youth pastor, music pastor, they all had done it, and they always, every morning they had morning prayer in the auditorium. So I waited until they were done, and I was just sitting in the hallway, and they came in, and I just said, I don't know, I don't care who did this, but I'm not cleaning it up. One of you have to go and clean this up. And one of the pastors looked me right in the eye, and he said, you forgot to take out the trash last night, so you clean it up. And I remember just grabbing my stuff and walking out.
Yeah.
And that's the day I quit. And in that moment, I was just mad. I'm like, these guys are so un-Christ-like. This is ridiculous. Like, you know, and my idea of like retribution and justice wanted to come forth, and I'm just like, I'm gonna go to the board. I'm gonna go to the elders. Like, I'm gonna get these guys fired for what they did. And I remember going, and there was another pastor I was connected with in town. He was a youth pastor, and I just remember going to him a couple days after. And I just said, you know, I told him the whole story, and he just looked at me. He's like, Ricardo, I'm so sorry you went through that. I was like, what can I do? I need to do something. And he just looked at me, and he's just like, you know, God has grace for them. And he's like, and I hope that you realize that same grace that he has for them, he has for you. And it was just one of those teaching moments of like, pastors are human too. And they're going to do things that are going to really upset you.
Oh, yeah.
And so you can choose to be retributive and try to get back at them and serve justice, or you can forgive them and move on. And it had been building for a few months prior to. I was like, I think my time is over here. Like, I think I'm going to move on. But that was kind of the nail in the coffin. And so I just did. In that moment, I just like, as frustrating as that moment was, like, I just wanted him to be like, we can do this, we can go to this, we can do this. We'll go to their elders. We'll get them in some sort of trouble for doing something like this. And it was that moment of like truly learning how to be gracious, how to turn the other cheek, because it was a moment that I just wanted to slap all of them. Yeah. So anyway, so that whole idea of, you know, you've heard it said, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. You know, obviously I knew that's where that sermon was going the minute you introduced it. I'm like, I guarantee you he's going to be preaching from Matthew 5.
Oh, yeah.
And I think people underestimate how important that message from Jesus was, because he's talking to a group of people who are, they're of the Jewish faith.
Yeah.
They know the Torah super well.
Yep.
So he's referring back to the Torah, saying,
right.
eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth.
That's right.
So this is like somebody coming in and rewriting the Bible for us in the 21st century.
That's right.
Like literally saying, like, the Bible says this, but I'm telling you otherwise.
That's right.
And I know this is one of your laws, but this law is BS.
That's right.
And you need to do this.
That's right.
So this is a radical moment in
right.
Jesus' teaching of like, you've heard it said,
That's right.
which he's referring to the Torah. He's
That's
referring to the Jewish law. These people are so religious and so fundamental in their beliefs. And he said, but I said this.
That's right.
I think people don't understand how radical of a moment that was.
Absolutely. I mean, he is bringing into contention, confrontation. There's a great German word. Germans have a great word for everything. It's Auseinandersetzung. It means this is a confrontation. Like Heidegger writes about that, Nietzsche writes about that. That very saying of Jesus is, I am bringing into contestation everything you thought was right and true and good and moral, and showing you it's not. Your sense of fairness, I think I said it in the sermon, your sense of fairness is based on a construction of human rationality and morality. But you have to be more than moral. You have to go further than fairness. Like, that gives me chills, dude. Yeah. Like, you have to be more than this.
Yeah.
And that's what it's going to take to save you, right? It's not a salvation from anything. It is a salvation to something. That's what I say all the time. Jesus didn't come to save you from some place. He came to save you towards the very place you are now. And if we can get that, man, like, there are many things Suncoast does that we say, you've heard it said, but now we say. And for us, the proof is always going to be in the pudding, right?
Yeah.
What is the best way to live? To serve the community in times of need, in times of crisis, in times of people's desperation. Even if it means breaking these old moral codes of religion, I say yes, every time. As opposed to, what am I doing to keep the status quo? What am I doing to not upset the apple cart of doctrine and creed and historical traditional teachings?
Right.
Because again, dude, that the Bible's it's a man-written book. You can say it's inspired by God, but I think anyone who writes about truth is inspired by God, right? That's what the Word of God is. The Word of God is truth, paramount. And the way I say it is, the Bible is true, and some of it actually happened. You know, I say that all the time.
Yeah.
The Bible is, whatever you think of it as the Word of God, it is continuously being written today, not just in the sermons we hear and preach, but in the way we live and exist. Like St. Francis of Assisi says, preach the good news wherever you go, and only when it's necessary, use words. Like, that is so boss, dude.
I love that line.
And so let's do that, man. You've heard it said. The way I'd love to say it, you've heard it said, but now I do unto you. I will show you the right way. Yeah. And you tell me, do all these man-made words and phrases, consonants and vowels and syllables strung together to create some sort of linguistic meaning, is that your truth? Or is this truth, I'm going to be here for you in your moment of weakness, your moment of crisis? Yeah. Like, what speaks louder to people, man?
Yeah. I mean, it's a call to action of the church to lead by example, right?
For sure.
You know, it's, you know, I subscribe to a lot of these, like, parenting advice Instagram pages and that kind of stuff. So I'm always seeing, like, you know, the Daily Dad, Daily Stoics sub
Love
content.
those, yeah.
And, you know, one of the things I see as a continual reminder is that our kids are watching what we're doing, not necessarily listening to what we're saying, right? So, like, if you say, get off your screen, get off your tablet, go play, but you're sitting there on your phone.
That's right, yep.
They're going to be, well, you're on your phone. Why would I do that? So you're going to do what you value, right? So, like, Laura and I value health and fitness. And so they watch me leave for the gym every morning. They know I'm going to the gym. And they watch Laura do like workout videos at home. And now they're starting to.
Nice.
Even though they don't need to, obviously.
Right,
We're not pushing them to do it. The other day I come home from the gym and Leighton's in her room and I hear like a workout video going. I'm like, what are you doing in here? She's like, I'm working out. She's like, I found a couple of videos on YouTube. I'm just doing it. And so like,
that's awesome.
But that's leading by example, right? We're not just telling them what to believe. We're showing them how to live. And I think that's the main difference, right? Like and it's that great quote from the Hillsong doc. It's like, if churches stopped focusing on numbers in the audience, salvations, but actually they measured success by how they show up in crisis, I really truly believe that the church wouldn't be in as much trouble as it is right now.
That's right.
Because when you do see a pastor wearing a $15,000 watch and then begging you for money and saying, oh, you know, this is to help the cause, this is to help the church, and you're wearing a $15,000 watch, sir. $450 or $450 shoes. Like, why would I give you money? You seem like you have plenty of it.
That's right.
But if we're living that life of like knowing, like, that is one of my favorite things that Larry has said. He's like, I want to make Suncoast. If Suncoast ever goes away, he's like, I want to make sure that the community feels that.
Yeah.
Like, if we're gone, there's going to be a hole in the community. There's going to be a need that we were filling.
That's right on.
And so that's so important. Not just to put on a great worship service or a great sermon. It's literally like we are helping effectively our community.
That's right.
And that's such a big challenge for us.
Yeah, man.
And that's the heart of what we're trying to do here.
That's absolutely right, man. That's right on. And, you know, there's to kind of finish off, you know, with the sermon, like, there's nothing fair in the mindset of Suncoast. Like, we're not existing for this sense of fairness. Like, we give cars to people who never step foot in our church.
Right.
And I know churches that you can't have your funeral there. There's a church in Dallas. I'm not going to name any names, but this lady died, and you know, they were just looking for a place to hold her funeral, and they called one of these churches. And the reason we know is because they called my church where I was working. And they said, hey, we tried this church. They told us since we weren't members there, we couldn't use their facility. And that was just the first church that came up. And we were like, absolutely, you can use our chapel. Let's go. And like, that spoke volumes to me, because if a church operates on the sense of fairness, like, I have a saying, what you catch them with is what you keep them with. And if we have to catch you with, you know, this, you know, we need Justin Bieber in the crowd, or we need celebrities surrounding us, or the pastor needs to drive a Ferrari, and we have to create this environment of just like, you know, entertainment, like, then we have to do it bigger and better every week,
right?
Just to keep you. Whereas if we catch you with truth, with honesty, with authenticity, with the sense of we will be here for you and your family, then that's how we keep you. That's what we catch you with, this authenticity. Then that's easy to keep you with.
Yeah.
And it's not because we can do it big, dude. We have the talent to do it big and to say, come and listen and watch this big, huge, whatever, and grow exponentially. But why? At the cost of what? Like, back to the Hillsong doc, one of the best lines in that scathing critique was, if the church's expansion outpaces its ability to show compassion, you are in trouble.
Yeah.
So that's what I love, man. We are growing. Don't get me wrong. Like, we are growing. But if we doubled in size overnight, our ability to show compassion to that many people would be very limited. So we're at a very healthy pace of growth and maturity. And so it's awesome to see, man.
Yeah. Well, do you have anything else that you wanted? I know you had to slim down your time a little bit on your sermon. So did you have anything else that you wanted to chat about on this specific?
No, man. I think we hit it all, dude. I think it was a very powerful one. If people haven't watched it, I actually had 2 or 3 people in conversation in the Grand Hall that says, rarely do I want to watch a sermon twice. I usually get everything I can.
Yeah.
And there were a few people who go, I'm going home to watch it again.
Yeah.
So this is one you have to really sit back and think about.
Yeah.
So,
no,
sure.
You did an excellent job. And I know Larry's up this weekend.
Larry's up this week.
And so we're still continuing with Practical Prescription.
Number 8.
Number
2
8.
more. Yep.
All right. Awesome. Well, thank you for being on the One More Thing, Troy.
You got it, Rick. Thanks, man.